Hello everyone. Today let us learn about the second chapter from our economics, that is sectors of Indian economy. Before we start with, let us look at these pictures. Now you will find that people are engaged in various economic activities. Some of these activities are producing goods, some are producing services. These activities are happening around us every minute even as we speak. So how do we understand these activities? These activities actually are economic activities. What is economic activity? It is an activity of making, producing, purchasing or selling goods or services. Any action that involves producing, distributing or consuming products or services is an economic activity. Any activity involving money or exchange of products or services are economic activities. But here if you see, they are categorized. So one way of doing this is to group them, classify them using some important criterion, and these groups are called sectors. We are categorizing all these activities. All the activities are not same. See, if you see in this picture, like the postman is delivering its services. They are the people, they are making the manufacturing the bricks, selling some cotton garments, and agriculture is going on. Cotton ball pluckers, they are plucking the cotton. So different types of activities are going on, and based on the nature of their work, if we are categorizing it, we are classifying it under certain categories. So these certain categories are called sectors. So here we are learning about sectors of Indian economy. Basically, sectors, it represents the group of activities or industries or market that share common features, and each sectors have their own unique characteristics and profile. So like in this chapter we are going to learn about three kinds of sectors: primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector. So all the sectors have their own unique characteristics. Let us try to understand more about all these characteristics. So the first sector is primary sector. Now look at these pictures. Okay, primary sector. There are many activities that are undertaken by different directly using natural resources. Take for example cultivation. It takes place within a crop season. For the growth of different kinds of crops, we depend mainly but not entirely on natural factors. So like for example cotton ball pluckers, if you see this activity, even in the book the same example is given, so I am taking the same example for you all. See, this is what say, but take for example cultivation of cotton. It takes place within a crop season for the growth of cotton plant. We depend mainly but not entirely on natural factors like rainfall, sunshine and climate. So the product of this activity, cotton, is a natural product. Okay, so naturally we are directly getting it from nature. Now let us take it this, cattle, like this is actually a picture of dairy farming. There's a farm where the dairy is also set up. So like see, dairy farming, in case we depend on the biological process of animals and availability of foders, etc. The product here is milk, also is a natural product. Similarly, if you see mining activity, see mineral and ores are also natural products, and when we produce the goods by extracting resources, it is an activity of primary sector. Why primary sector? Because it forms the base for all other products that is subsequently make. Since most of the natural product what we get is what we get are from agriculture, dairy, fishing, forestry. So these sectors are also called agriculture or related sectors. Say fishing, then farming, then forestry and mining. These all are related to the agriculture sector. Second one is secondary sector. Secondary sector covers activities in which natural products are changed into other forms through ways of manufacturing that we associate with the industrial activities. Let us take this last picture. See, what is happening here is, Secondary sector, if you see, it is the next step after primary. The product is not produced by nature but has to be made, and therefore some process of manufacturing is essential. This could be in a factory, a workshop, or at home. For example, using cotton fiber from the plant, they spin yarn and weave cloths. Using sugar cane as a raw material, we make sugar or gur. We convert earth into bricks and use bricks to make houses and buildings. Since these sectors gradually become associated with the different kinds of industries that come up, it is called industrial sector. So these are called industrial sector. So this is what is about secondary sector. Now next is about tertiary sector. Now these are the activities that help to develop the primary and secondary sector. These activities by themselves do not produce a good, but they are an aid or a support for the production process. So what are they? Say like banking, transport, trade, storage, then other than that, like transport and communication. These all are tertiary, comes under tertiary sector, activities of tertiary sector. And these activities, they help the development of primary and secondary sectors. For example, just here for example, it is given that for example, goods that are produced in the primary and secondary sector would need to be transported. So for that we require transport and communication. We may need to even talk to the other person over telephone or send letters, that is communication, or borrow money from bank, that is banking, to help production and trade. Transport, all these, storage, communication, banking, trade, these all are the example of tertiary sectors. Since these activities generate services rather than goods, so these tertiary sectors is also called service sector. Not only banking, transport and communication and trade comes under tertiary sector, but also there are some other service providing sectors also comes under tertiary sectors. See, here it is written that since service sector also includes some essential services that may be directly help in the production of goods. For example, we require teachers, doctors, they all provide services, and those who provide personal services such as washerman, barber, cobbler, lawyer, and people who do administrative and accounting work, those all work also comes under service sector. In recent times, certain new services based on information technology such as internet cafe, ATM booths, call centers, software companies, etc., they also have come up and they have categorized under service sector. Now, the another part what we have to learn is the economic activities. You understood about now primary, secondary and tertiary sector and how we have grouped them. What are the activities that are involved in primary, secondary and tertiary sector? Based on that, economic activities, though, are grouped into three different categories. They are highly interdependent. Let us try to understand the interdependency between all these three sectors. For that, example is given. Let us do this and try to understand that how they are interdependent with each other. See, the table 2.1 shows the example of economic activity, and they have asked us few questions that like complete the above table and show how sectors are dependent on each other. Now do this. Let us try to understand that. One example is given. Imagine what would happen if farmer refuses to sell sugar cane to a particular sugar mill. The mill will have to shut down. This is the example of secondary or industrial sector being dependent on the primary sector. Now, likewise, let us take the second example. Imagine what would happen to the cotton cultivation if companies decide not to buy from the Indian market and import all cotton they need from other countries. Indian cotton cultivation will become less profitable and the farmer may even go bankrupt. If they cannot quickly switch to the other crops, cotton prices will fall. This is an example of primary sector or agriculture sector and related sector being dependent on secondary sector. So this is the example of primary sector related to the secondary sector. Next example, let us see. Farmer buy many goods such as tractors, pump sets, electricity, pesticides and fertilizers. Imagine what would happen if the price of the fertilizers and pump sets go up. Cost of the cultivation of the farmer will rise and their profit will be reduced. This shows that this is an example of primary sector depend on secondary sector. Then people working in industrial and service sector need food. Imagine what would happen if there is a strike by transporters of lorries refuse to take vegetables, milk, etc. For rural areas, food will become scarce in urban sector, whereas the farmer will be unable to sell their products. This shows that the secondary sectors are dependent on primary sector while primary sector depends on tertiary sector. This means that all the three sectors, they are highly interdependent, because this work or the economic activity cannot be fulfilled until and unless all the three sectors are involved. In case of farmer may buy goods, here if you see that the primary sector depends upon the secondary sector, because the cost of cultivation of the farmer will rise only when they get pump set, electricity, pesticide and fertilizers, which belongs to the secondary sector. And if you see this one, imagine what would happen. What is happening here is, this is the example of primary sector or agriculture related sector depend upon secondary sector. So based on this, you try to analyze by yourself also. Just an example, I have given it to you, I have told you the answer. You also try to understand it by your own, you will able to do it. Now next question, if you see, explain the difference between primary, secondary and tertiary sectors with examples other than those mentioned in the textbook. So we should have to take the example which is not mentioned in the textbook, but let us try to analyze all these other examples and try to understand about this primary, secondary and tertiary sector. See, primary sector, this includes those activities that are undertaken by directly natural resources, what we have understood and studied. For example, cultivation of wheat. If you take, that is not the example given in the textbook, but we can take this example. For example, cultivation of wheat. Secondary sector, they asked. This sector covers those activities which are natural or primary products are changed into other form through manufacturing or ways of manufacturing. For example, again, let us take the example wheat. We manufacture into different products like biscuits or bread, anything. Then tertiary sector, if you see, it includes those activities that help in the development of the primary and secondary sector. For example, railway, shopkeepers, bankings, etc. The second question given here is to classify the following list of occupation under primary, secondary and tertiary sector. The list is given: tailor, basket weaving, flower cultivator, milk vendor, fisherman, priest, courier, worker in match factory, money lender, gardener, porter, beekeeper, astronaut and call centers. Let us categorize this. I think out of all this, in primary sector, flower cultivator, fisherman, gardener and beekeeper will come. Secondary sector, basket weavers, workers in match factory and porter will come. And tertiary sector, tailor, milk vendor, priest, courier, money lender, astronaut, call centers employee will come. Let us see the fourth question. Students in the school are often classified into primary and secondary or junior and senior. What is the criteria that is used? Do you think this is useful for classification? Discuss. The criteria that is used in the school to classify the student in primary and secondary or junior or senior is a level of education. Yes, I think this is useful classification. Why? Because our constitution has decided that the state to secure free and compulsory education to the children above 14. This falls under primary education. So what is happening here is the criteria is decided for primary education, and primary education prepare a ground on which the people can build upon or acquire specific skills. So of course this is useful classification. Then secondary education, if you see, it's a level where the people or the students aged group 14 to 18 years prepare, they actually learn, and it prepares the student for entry into higher education as well as for work. So this category, I think, is useful for classification. So did you understand why we classify and what are the criteria we use it for classification? That is called sectors. Okay, now next, if you see comparison of different sectors, of course we will take this topic in our next class, but Let us try to understand this more so that you can well verse with what is private sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector. Primary sector, it is known as agriculture or allied sector, service sector. This sector produces goods and services by exploiting natural resources. This sector is organized and use traditional techniques. Activities related to agriculture, forestry, fishing, mining, animal husbandry are included in this sector. This sector continues to be the largest employer in most of the developing nations like India. Secondary sector, if you see, it is known as manufacturing sector. This sector transforms one goods into another by creating more utility from it. It is organized sector and used better techniques. It includes manufacturing units, small scale units, large firms, big corporates and multinational corporations. This sector has failed to provide employment to surplus workers of primary sector. Why? Because most of the work is done through machine. And tertiary sector, it is known as service sector. This sector provides useful services to primary and secondary sector for the smooth functioning of their working. It is organized sector and use better techniques. Service related to banking, insurance, trade and communication comes from this sector. This sector's sharing in employment is increasing. In our coming presentation, you are going to learn about why tertiary sector has gained lots of popularity these days and how does it generate more employment. So this is all about different types of sectors what we have learned today. We have learned about what does this economic activities, sectors of economic activity means, and then how they are categorized like primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector. And then we also have studied about, we have understood about how they are interdependent with each other. And then we also have seen some characteristic features of all these sectors. Okay, so this is all about today's studies or today's class. I will take the another class in which we are going to learn about of course again the comparison of the three sectors and historical changes in the sectors, and then primary, secondary and tertiary sectors in India. Okay, how do they generate GDP? All these things we are going to learn in our next class. Till then, thank you so much, children.